He left the safe full of money open to test her, but the employee's response was so unexpected that it left him speechless, not knowing what to say. Before we begin this exciting story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching us from, and don't forget to leave a like to keep following along. The electric gate of the mansion made that metallic sound that almost seemed like a warning. You are entering a world that is not yours. Camilla paused for a few seconds before entering, with her backpack slung over one shoulder and her cleaning uniform folded inside. The gate closed behind her, and she felt as though she were trapped between two worlds. Her own, tight, difficult, but full of love, and that enormous place, cold, with no trace of a home. She didn't know much about the owner, only that his name was Edgar Ribeiro, owner of a tech company, a widower, and rarely appeared in the news despite being a millionaire. They said he was very reserved and hard to deal with. They also said he was stingy and trusted no one. Camilla didn't care. She needed the job. With her mother sick at home, every penny mattered. She was already used to juggling time and money. She woke up early, worked until noon, went to university in the afternoon, and still ran to the hospital every night. But she didn't complain. Her mother always said life was that hectic. The secret was to keep going. When Lucia, the housekeeper, opened the front door, she looked Camilla up and down, without smiling or even greeting her properly. She just nodded and said, "Come in, and don't mind the mess." But there was no mess. The floor gleamed, the windows looked brand new, and everything was so tidy it seemed like no one lived there. Camilla entered quietly, observing everything carefully, almost afraid of bumping into some expensive furniture. Lucia spoke quickly as she walked. "You'll take care of the ground floor, living room, dining room, office, guest bathroom, and kitchen. Bedrooms are mine, as is the laundry. Everything here runs on schedule. No cell phones, no chatting, and don't ask questions about the boss. He hates curiosity." Camilla just nodded without saying a word. She wasn't much of a talker. She preferred to observe first. The office caught her attention immediately. A large, dark wooden door closed. Lucia pointed and said, "Don't go in there unless he says so." Camilla simply replied, "All right." They passed through the kitchen, where a younger guy was washing fruit. He smiled at Camilla and whispered, "Good luck." Camilla found it odd, but paid no mind. In the first few hours of work, she focused on everything. She cleaned the furniture carefully, wiped where no one would look, even dusted the baseboards. She was detailed, doing everything as her mother had taught her, with care, as if she were cleaning her own home. Lucia passed by occasionally, watching out of the corner of her eye. She didn't say anything, but jotted everything down in a little notebook. By mid-afternoon, Camilla was called to the library. Edgar was there, sitting in a leather armchair with a tablet in hand. He didn't look up when she entered, just pointed to a shelf and said, "You can clean there, but don't touch the papers." Camilla replied, "Yes, sir." But inside, she was surprised at how calm her voice sounded. As she cleaned the books, she felt she was being watched. She turned slightly and saw Edgar looking straight at her. No smile, no turning away. Camilla kept working. She knew how to handle that kind of stare. From a young age, she'd learned not to let others think she was worth less. The afternoon ended, and Camilla left with tired legs but a clear mind. It was only the first day, but she already felt that something was off. Not something bad, just strange, like the feeling of being tested without being told, as if every step were part of an exam. On the bus home, it was packed as usual, but she found a seat by the window. She looked at the darkening sky, turned on her phone to check for messages from her mom. There was only one. "I love you. Everything is going to be okay." Camilla smiled to herself. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was clear: she would not bow her head to anyone. The next day, she returned to the mansion, unaware that this was just the beginning of something much bigger, and that the man who seemed so distant was about to discover that not everyone has a price. Camilla arrived on time her second day, even before Lucia opened the door. She already had her uniform on, and her backpack was lighter, just a bottle of water and a pack of cookies. Her mother had had a rough night, so Camilla hadn't slept well, but she didn't mention it to anyone. She didn't want to give them any reason to think she was weak or distracted. She was there to prove she could work. Lucia opened the door and barely looked her in the eye. She just nodded and walked off like she was in a hurry to get somewhere. Camilla entered silently. She already knew where to leave her backpack, where to grab the cloths and the bucket. She started in the kitchen, which was already mostly clean, just some fingerprints on the fridge and crumbs on the counter. She worked with her usual pace, fast and precise, every movement purposeful, wasting no time. Around 10 a.m., she heard the boss's voice for the first time that day. He was talking on the phone, walking down the hallway, and entered the office with the door wide open. Camilla saw him out of the corner of her eye, holding a black folder and a gold pen. The door stayed open. That was strange. The day before, the rule had been clear, no entry unless invited. But now the door was open and Lucia was nowhere in sight. From the hallway, Camilla could see part of the room. A dark wood desk, a swivel chair, colorless paintings, shelves full of thick books. But what stood out the most was a large grey safe, half built into the back wall. And most importantly, it was wide open, both doors ajar, as if someone had left it that way on purpose. From where she stood, she could see stacks of bills, lots of money, 100s, 50s, bundled with rubber bands, and even a few boxes that might contain jewelry. There was so much it felt shameful to look at. Camilla felt a chill in her stomach. She didn't know whether to keep cleaning the hallway or leave. She wanted to close the office door, but feared it might be misinterpreted. She decided to stay where she was. She grabbed a dry cloth and cleaned a console in the hallway, but her eyes kept drifting to the safe. It was impossible to ignore. The whole scene was too strange. It had to be a test. A few minutes later, Edgar appeared in the hallway. He looked serious as always, but his eyes were softer. He looked straight at Camilla and calmly said, "You can go in and wipe the desk, but only the desk." Then he went back upstairs without waiting for a response. Camilla entered slowly, her heart pounding. The first thing she did was turn her head away from the safe. She cleaned the desk as if someone were watching her every second, every corner. She saw a half-finished cup of coffee, already cold. She took it away, wiped the ring, passed a dry cloth, and never once approached the safe. But the presence of that open money felt physical, like the smell of the bills filled the room. She glanced at the door, still open, and for a second wondered if it was all a trap. Maybe a hidden camera. Maybe Lucia was even hiding somewhere, waiting for her to make a mistake. But even if it wasn't, Camilla knew who she was. She knew what her mother had taught her since she was little. She finished cleaning the desk, calmly turned around, walked past the safe without looking directly at it, and left the office. In the hallway, she ran into Edgar again. This time he said nothing, just stood there, looking into her eyes. Camilla held his gaze firmly. That's when she spoke, her voice calm but full of conviction. "My mother taught me to never take what isn't mine." Edgar said nothing. He just nodded slowly, as if processing what he had just heard. Then he entered the room, closed the door, and locked it. Camilla returned to the kitchen and continued her work, but deep down she knew something was happening there. It wasn't just about cleaning a house. There was a test, someone watching, something behind that open door that exposed safe. And if it was a game, she wasn't afraid to play it right. The afternoon passed more slowly that day. After the safe scene, Camilla finished her work as always, but her mind was spinning. The sentence she had said in the hallway still echoed in her ears. It hadn't been planned. It just came out like she'd heard it so many times at home, between medications and silences. It was like her mother's voice lived inside her. She was in the laundry room rinsing some cloths when Lucia appeared out of nowhere, as if she had come through the wall. She stood with arms crossed, staring at Camilla, and asked in a dry tone, "Did you go into the office today?" Camilla didn't look away. She just answered, "Yes. Mr. Edgar asked me to clean the desk." Lucia stayed quiet for a few seconds, then turned and left. She didn't even reply, but the look she gave, half suspicious, half bitter, made it clear to Camilla that this woman was waiting for a reason to fire her. At the end of the day, just as she was about to leave, Camilla passed the living room and heard Edgar calling her name, just her name, not raising his voice, not sounding angry or friendly, just calling. Camilla returned, stopped at the entrance, and waited. He was sitting in the same place as the day before, legs crossed, looking at his tablet screen. He looked up and pointed to the chair across from him. Camilla sat down straight, without showing nervousness. "What did you think of my office?" Camilla answered bluntly. "It seemed nice, tidy." Edgar looked at her for a few seconds, as if trying to decipher something. Then he asked, "Did you see the safe open?" Camilla took a deep breath, looked him straight in the eye and said, "Yes, I saw it." He kept staring, unblinking. "And why didn't you touch anything?" Camilla didn't hesitate. "Because it wasn't mine." Silence fell for a few seconds. Edgar, for the first time, gave a faint smile, almost imperceptible. "You know there was money in there, right? A lot of money." Camilla nodded. "I know. But my mother taught me from a young age never to take what doesn't belong to me, even if no one is watching." Edgar exhaled through his nose, like someone confirming a suspicion. Then he looked down and returned to his tablet. "You can go, that's all." Camilla stood up slowly and left without asking questions. On her way to the exit, her heart was pounding, not from fear. It was like she had passed a test and deep down knew she had done well. And even if that man didn't say it, she knew he had understood that he had tested her, and she had responded with character. Outside, the sun was almost gone. Camilla sat at the bus stop and watched people passing by. Most were in a hurry, phones in hand, tired faces. She stayed silent, just watching. She had a lot on her mind: her mother's illness, university delays, overdue rent. And even with all that, she never thought of taking anything from anyone. It wasn't pride, it was integrity, a choice she made every day, even when no one was watching. When she got home, she found her mother lying down, weaker than usual, cheeks sunken, voice low, but eyes still full of life. Camilla sat beside her, held her hand, and told her how the day had gone. "Not everything, just the basics," she said. She talked about the strange boss, the stern housekeeper, the heavy routine. Her mother listened in silence, nodding occasionally. In the end, she looked at her daughter with that look only a mother can give and said, "You're stronger than you think." Camilla didn't answer. She just smiled, though her eyes were full of tears. That night, before sleeping, she stared at the ceiling and thought about everything that had happened. She couldn't understand why someone would leave that much money out like that, but she knew she had done the right thing. And if she had to do it again, she would, without a second thought. What she didn't know was that that choice, which for her was simply the obvious one, was about to change everything, and not just in the house where she worked, but in the lives of everyone around her. Edgar had never trusted anyone easily. He was the kind of man who, if he spilled his own glass, would first look around before grabbing a cloth. But after what happened with Camilla, something inside him wouldn't stop stirring. Her words had echoed in his mind all night, not because of her politeness or firmness, but because they were true, and truth was something rare in his world. The next morning, Edgar got up earlier than usual and had coffee on the back terrace, something he hadn't done in months. He sat with his tablet in hand, but didn't even touch the screen. He just stared into space, remembering the girl's gaze. Simple, direct, unafraid. It had stirred something in him. There was something about her that wasn't ordinary. It wasn't just the safe. It was about who she truly was. He stood up, went to his office, opened his laptop, and typed in Camilla's full name. He found the resume Lucia had sent days earlier. Everything was there: age, address, nursing student, basic references, nothing remarkable. Just a handwritten letter from a woman named Mrs. Eunice, a neighbor, saying that Camilla was a young woman of good principles. Edgar read that phrase 3 times. It seemed simple, but it carried weight. That's not something you write for just anyone. He called Mauro, his personal bodyguard, through the intercom. When the man appeared at the office door, Edgar got straight to the point. "I want you to find out who this girl is, where she lives, who she lives with, what she does outside this house. Discreetly." Mauro simply nodded and left. That's how things worked with Edgar. No one asked why, they just obeyed. Meanwhile, Camilla was working as if nothing had happened. She kept her pace, fulfilled her duties, and avoided crossing paths with Lucia more than necessary. She didn't know whether the boss had liked her answer about the safe, and she didn't expect to find out. She just wanted to keep the job, and for that it was enough to do everything right. Edgar came downstairs in the late afternoon and watched her from afar. He stood in the doorway of the library, watching her clean the baseboards with focus. It was like she didn't know she was being watched, as if she were alone in the world, caring for every detail without expecting applause. He stood there watching until Camilla noticed him and stood up, wiping her hands on the cloth. "Good afternoon, sir," she said simply. He nodded in response and went back upstairs once again without saying a word. But inside, his mind wouldn't stop. He was starting to piece together an image of that girl, bit by bit. And the more the pieces came together, the more he wanted to know. Not out of suspicion, but genuine interest, real curiosity. 2 nights later, Mauro returned with a brown envelope. Edgar waited for him to leave and carefully opened it. The first photos were of the house's facade, small, paint peeling, iron gate, and an old bicycle leaning against the wall. The next showed Camilla leaving home at 6 in the morning, backpack on her shoulder, always in a hurry. Then photos of her at university sitting at the back of the classroom, notebook on her lap. And lastly, at the hospital, holding the hand of a thin woman, wearing a headscarf and hooked to an IV. Edgar stared at that last photo for a long while. Camilla's expression showed exhaustion and tenderness at the same time. That mix of someone carrying the world on their shoulders, yet still caring for the one they love. He read the report. The woman was her mother, Mrs. Lords. Advanced cancer, limited resources. Camilla split her time between work, studies, and the hospital. She lived with her mother, had no father or siblings. Everything about her was effort. Everything was a fight. He closed the envelope and sat in silence, not quite sure what to think. The truth was, it touched him because it reminded him of someone he had tried to forget, someone who had also carried the world alone, his mother. When Edgar was a child, his mother did everything alone. His father left early, and she took care of 2 kids, working nights, cleaning houses by day, sleeping little, and crying in secret. And when she died, she left a void that not even millions could fill. Edgar rested his elbows on the desk and ran his hands over his face. That girl, who had only come to clean the floor, was stirring memories he thought he had buried. And worse, she was showing him that maybe there are still people who do the right thing, even when no one is watching. That night, Edgar couldn't sleep well. He paced back and forth through the house, thinking about Camilla, about his mother, and about everything he had been ignoring for years. For the first time in a long while, he felt a genuine desire to help someone without expecting anything in return. He just didn't know how to do it without making it seem like he was trying to repay some invisible debt. The next day, he left before anyone woke up. He took the car and went to the hospital where Camilla took her mother. He asked to speak with the administration. He wanted to know if it was possible to transfer her to a better room. He wanted to know how much the full treatment would cost. No one quite understood what he was doing there. Not even he had it fully clear. He just felt he had to do something. It was no longer about a test. It was about truly seeing someone. And that was just the beginning. Because from that moment on, Edgar was about to discover that Camilla was worth far more than any bundle of bills in an open safe. The alarm rang before the sun rose. That annoying sound had been part of Camilla's life for so long that her body woke up even before it went off. She got up slowly, stepping on the cold floor, carefully not to wake her mother, who slept in the next room. She went into the bathroom, splashed water on her face, and looked at herself in the mirror. Dark circles, messy hair, but her gaze remained steady. Another day was ahead, and she was going to face it like she always did. The house was modest, with peeling walls and a faint smell of dampness mixed with coffee. The kitchen had an old stove that lit with matches. The fridge made a faint noise when opened, but inside that house lived a strength that couldn't be seen with the eyes. It was in the way Camilla made coffee, even in a rush, in how she gently folded her mother's blanket, in the care she took to leave warm bathwater ready, even if she didn't have time to shower herself. Mrs. Lords woke up weaker that day, sunken eyes, dry lips, paler skin, but even so she tried to smile when her daughter appeared at the door with a cup of tea. "Did you sleep well, Mom?" Camilla asked in a soft voice. "A little. My body was hurting," her mother replied, her voice barely a whisper. Camilla propped up the pillows behind her back and pulled the blanket up to her neck. Then she placed the cup in her hands and sat on the edge of the bed for a few moments. She knew she couldn't stay long. The bus came at 6:20, and if she missed it, she'd be late to the boss's house, and she couldn't risk that job. Before leaving, she left 2 containers of food in the fridge, along with the meds sorted in a disposable cup. The next-door neighbor, Mrs. Eunice, always came mid-morning to check in and help with something. But Camilla did almost everything. Since the first consultation, since the first test, since the shock of hearing the word cancer, she had been walking out the door with her backpack, worn-out hoodie covering her uniform, hair tied up in a rushed bun. The street was still dark, and the few cars that passed sped by with their headlights on. As she walked, she thought about the bills, the overdue university fees, the tests her mother needed to redo. Everything was urgent, but she walked steadily, without lowering her head. On the bus, she sat by the window. She watched the city slowly wake up. Crowded stops, people yawning, coffee vendors on corners. It was like everyone carried their own burden. No one there had an easy life, but no one complained out loud either. It was a silence of survival. Camilla arrived at the mansion at exactly 7, passed through the gate, greeted the gardener, entered through the side kitchen door, and changed clothes in the small back room. Lucia was already there, as always, organizing kitchen rags with a scowl. She didn't say good morning, just handed over a list of tasks and left. While sweeping the entrance hall, Camilla thought about her studies. She had an exam that night and hadn't read half the content. She would try to review during lunch. She knew she had to do well. She was in her second-to-last semester. She dreamed of graduating, getting her diploma, landing a steady job at a hospital, and getting her mother out of that tight life. The problem was, time gave no break. She could either study, care for her mother, work, or sleep, and the hardest part was doing all that without losing her mind. At lunch, she sat in the kitchen with a container of rice, eggs, and salad she had brought from home. While eating, she took out her notebook and began reviewing her notes. Her phone vibrated now and then, but she only checked it if it was a call. She knew that any moment could bring news about her mother, a downturn, an emergency. She lived in a constant state of alert. After work, she rushed straight to university, arrived at the last minute, sat in the back, opened her notebook, and took a deep breath. The class started, and she tried to focus, but her mind kept racing. She was tired, hungry, and still had to stop by the hospital before going home. By 9:30 p.m., she was at the hospital, entered her mother's room, who was sleeping, spoke to the nurse, asked about tests, medication schedules, then sat on a bench in the hallway and stayed there for a while, watching the movement. People coming and going, gurneys passing, children crying. It was like the whole world was exhausted. Only after 11 p.m. did she get home, took a quick shower, ate a piece of bread with reheated coffee, and collapsed into bed, eyes closing on their own. But before falling asleep, she stared at the ceiling and thought that all of this would one day be worth it, that all the effort, all the sacrifices would eventually have a reward. Camilla didn't know it yet, but while she lived that exhausting routine, someone had started seeing it all. Edgar had in his hands all the information, photos, reports, details, but what weighed the most was the image of that girl, thin, exhausted, yet standing. Always standing, and for him, who had seen many wealthy people with empty souls, that girl, with so little, was showing him what it really meant to be great. Edgar didn't like remembering the past. To him, it was a closed drawer full of things he preferred to forget. But some memories come uninvited, especially at night, when the house falls silent. Those were the moments when the old bitterness of childhood hit, the feeling of abandonment, swallowed anger, the frustration of being betrayed by the one you trusted most. He was born in the countryside of Minas Gerais, in a small house with 3 rooms, 2 brothers, and a mother who worked magic with little. The father was an absent man, one of those who showed up now and then only to make things worse. The mother cleaned rich people's houses in the village, left the kids with neighbors, and returned late with aching feet and an empty lunchbox. Edgar grew up watching his mother endure in silence, smile when she wanted to cry, give the last piece of meat to the youngest son. That stayed with him. He was a smart but quiet child. From early on, he learned to trust only himself. While his 2 brothers fought for attention, he hid in the back of the house, tinkering with pieces of old radios. He was curious. He liked to understand how things worked. He touched broken clocks, disassembled fans, tried to fix everything. His mother used to say he had a gift, and maybe he did. As a teenager, he set up a small electronics repair shop in a borrowed garage, worked in the morning, studied in the afternoon, and handled tools late into the night. He saved every penny, tracked expenses in a little notebook. Meanwhile, his middle brother Fabio spent money he didn't have. He was more talkative, more charming, and loved showing off the little he got: fake brand clothes, financed phone, sneakers in installments. He never liked that Edgar was slowly but surely growing. At 23, Edgar got his big break. A college friend pitched a business idea, a home monitoring app. At the time, no one took it seriously, but Edgar saw the potential. He used his small savings, sold his motorcycle, took a risky loan, and dove in. He worked day and night building prototypes, testing code, pitching the idea in meetings where they laughed in his face. But he didn't give up. 2 years later, the app landed a contract with a major company, then another, and another. Suddenly, his name started appearing in business magazines, in event invitations, in meetings with investors. That's when he made his first mistake. He brought his brother in as a partner. He did it out of loyalty, out of family, out of that illusion that blood matters more. He gave Fabio half the company. At first, Fabio seemed grateful, but soon showed his true colors. He spent more than he earned, invented partnerships that only benefited his friends, manipulated employees, turned people against Edgar, spread lies and stories, all behind his back. By the time Edgar realized, the company was drowning in problems. He had to act fast, cut costs, fire his brother, remove him from the company with a hard, resentment-filled agreement. Their mother, already ill by then, asked them not to fight, but it was too late. The brother never spoke to him again, and what was left was a bitter taste, the certainty that trusting someone was asking to be betrayed. After that, Edgar changed. He closed off his heart, his home, his life. He surrounded himself with contracts, lawyers, and cold employees. Whoever entered his life did so with limits, and whoever left didn't leave even a memory. That way was easier. Less risk, less disappointment. He made a lot of money, bought properties, invested in companies, traveled to places he had never imagined. But he never again had someone close whom he truly trusted, not even to have coffee with. Silence became routine, loneliness a choice. It was better to live like that than to open space again, only to be betrayed. And so time passed, years one after another, until Camilla appeared. Her honesty, so raw, so simple, touched something inside him that he didn't even know was still alive. A part that life hadn't managed to kill. That memory of when he himself had nothing but still did the right thing. When he helped his mother collect coins, fixed neighbors' plugs for free, cleaned the yard without being asked. It was another time, another mindset, but that part was still there, tucked away in some corner. Camilla, without knowing it, evoked that memory just with a sincere look, just with a casual phrase. And now Edgar was there, reliving everything he had tried to bury. His past, marked by struggle and distrust, clashed head-on with her story, so similar and yet so different. And deep down, he knew he was beginning to want to take care of that girl, not out of pity, but because maybe she was the first person in years who wanted nothing from him, only the work. And that, for a man who had once had everything and lost what truly mattered, was worth more than any fortune. Lucia had worked in Mr. Edgar's house for over 10 years. She knew every corner of that mansion. She knew the sound the front door made when it wasn't properly closed, knew when the boss was in a bad mood, just by how he left his glass in the sink. She even knew when his perfume scent changed. And although she was discreet, she felt like she owned it all. She believed that if anyone had a fixed place in that house, it was her. She was the kind of employee who commanded respect with a look. She arrived before everyone, watched everything from afar, and made sure to remind the newcomers who was in charge. She wasn't mean, but neither was she warm. She never invited anyone to sit, never offered coffee outside working hours, never gave a gratuitous compliment. Everything about her was contained, rigid, as if smiling were a weakness. And when Camilla arrived, Lucia immediately felt something was different. The first day she pretended she didn't see anything special, but as hours passed, she noticed that the girl's way of being annoyed her. Camilla was quiet, but had presence. She did everything carefully but without flattery, and worst of all, the boss started paying attention to her, something Lucia had never seen with any other employee. What bothered her most was that Edgar began coming downstairs more often, which was strange. Before, he stayed locked upstairs, isolated in his office or library. Now, occasionally, he would stroll through the house, start a conversation here and there, especially with Camilla. He asked about the work, posed direct questions, and listened attentively. It was unusual, and Lucia noticed right away. His attention was shifting, and that triggered an alarm inside her. The straw that broke the camel's back happened on a Wednesday. Just after lunch, Lucia entered the living room and saw Edgar standing on the terrace, talking with Camilla. Both were standing, he with his arms crossed, she holding a cleaning rag. The conversation seemed calm. Neither smiled much, but there was a calmness, a naturalness. Lucia watched for a few seconds until they noticed her. When both realized, the conversation stopped. Camilla returned to her task, and Edgar went inside, as if nothing had happened. But Lucia felt it. This was the beginning of a shift. In the following days, Edgar began to behave differently, with small gestures. He passed by Camilla and pretended not to hear her greeting. He gave curt orders, asked to redo tasks already done, moved the rags around on purpose just to point out mistakes, always in that passive tone, without raising his voice but generating pressure. Camilla, for her part, didn't respond. She just swallowed hard, took a deep breath and carried on. She had met people like that before, people who felt threatened over the smallest thing. But that didn't make her lower herself, it only made her firmer. Lucia didn't understand why it bothered her so much. She was just a young girl with a simple uniform and an old backpack, but her presence was like a pebble in the shoe. And every gesture she made, no matter how simple, seemed to threaten the space Lucia had conquered over the years. She began to wonder, is the boss thinking of replacing me? Is he going to take everything away from me because of this rookie? And that's when Lucia began to act with more venom. One day, she switched the cleaning products in the pantry, putting disinfectant where neutral soap should go. Camilla unknowingly used the wrong product and left the living room chairs a little greasy. Lucia immediately pointed it out in front of another employee and said in that cold voice, "You have to be more attentive here. This isn't a school. It's the house of important people." Another day, she spilled water in the hallway and waited for Camilla to slip. She almost succeeded. The girl slipped a little but managed to hold on to the wall. Lucia pretended to be cleaning and disguised it, but inside was boiling with rage because it hadn't worked. But the worst was what she began to sow with words. She went to Edgar and dropped comments like, "That new one is dedicated, but sometimes she seems distracted." I don't know if she can handle everything. Or, she's nice, isn't she? But be careful. People who are too nice sometimes hide something. She never said it directly, always with the tone of someone who just wants to help. And Edgar, though silent, listened to everything. He didn't respond, but paid attention. Lucia didn't realize the effect was the opposite. The more she tried to diminish Camilla, the more Edgar noticed her. Not out of pity, but because he saw that even with everything on her shoulders, the girl stayed firm, without complaining, without causing conflict, without getting lost. And that only made Lucia more bitter. She knew it wasn't easy to be noticed in that house. She had spent years being invisible, earning her place through time, silence, rigidity. And now, a simple girl with no past there, suddenly everyone mentioned her name. She couldn't accept that so easily. So Lucia decided that pressing wasn't enough anymore. She had to take her down. One way or another, she would find a flaw. She would prove that Camilla wasn't as pure as she seemed. She would make the boss open his eyes, and it was with that thought that she began to prepare a plan, a detail, a gap, something that seemed small but was enough to stain the girl's image. Because for Lucia, losing ground in that house was like losing the floor, and she wasn't going to let that happen without a fight. Lucia was always good at two things, observing silently and making things seem natural. She was the kind of person who didn't shout, didn't bang on the table, but managed to bring someone down with just a couple of well-calculated actions. And at that moment, she already had everything plotted in her head. If she wanted to get Camilla out of there, she had to do it calmly. No scandals. It had to seem like the girl had fallen on her own. The first step was to study her routine. Lucia began watching every move Camilla made without her noticing. She noted where she kept the cleaning products, what time she stopped to drink water, how she folded the rags after using them. It seemed silly, but for someone planning to undermine another, that's ammunition. Every little habit could become a trap. Early Monday morning, before anyone else, Lucia entered the kitchen and went straight to the cutlery drawer. She took a stainless steel knife, one of those nice ones only used for special dinners, and placed it inside an empty cleaning bucket in the back storage room. Then she left the storage door unlocked and the light off, as if nothing had been touched. She knew that later Camilla would go there to get a rag, and if they found the knife afterward, who would be the first to be questioned? But that morning nothing happened. Camilla entered the storage, took what she needed, and left without noticing anything strange. Lucia watched from afar, just looking. The trap didn't work. Maybe it was too soon. The next day she tried again. This time she removed the labels from 2 product bottles, put bleach in the window cleaner bottle, and vice versa. Then she waited for Camilla to use one to clean the bathroom mirrors. The girl took the wrong bottle, sprayed the product, but immediately smelled the strong scent. She stopped, read the label, frowned, noticed something was wrong. She went to the sink, disposed of it, and went to find another. She didn't even say anything to anyone. Lucia saw everything from the corner of her eye, irritated. Camilla was more attentive than she appeared. That's when Lucia realized she would need something bigger, a mistake that couldn't be explained. Something that wasn't just carelessness, but touched trust. And then the idea came to her. The safe. She knew where the spare key was. She had seen it years ago, one afternoon when Edgar dropped a keychain on the floor. He kept the key in a small box hidden behind a bookshelf. She never told anyone, but Lucia saw it and kept it to herself. Back then, she thought she would never use it. Now it was the centerpiece of the plan. On Wednesday, she waited for Edgar to leave. He had said he had a meeting out of town and would only return the next day. Lucia took advantage of the moment. She entered the office wearing gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints. She went to the bookshelf, took out the little box, and grabbed the key. She opened the safe, took out a small but visibly expensive watch, and put it inside Camilla's backpack, which was hanging in the laundry room. She did it without hesitation, without fear, without guilt. Then she closed the safe again, returned the key to its place, and left. All in less than 5 minutes. It looked like she was just folding a sheet, as cold as a stone. At the end of the shift, she waited for the right moment. Camilla was washing the kitchen sink, distracted, with the backpack still hanging. Lucia called another employee, a new maintenance guy, and said out loud, "Have you seen my gold wristwatch? The one the boss gave me last Christmas. It disappeared from the cabinet. The guy said he didn't know anything, but the seed was planted." Lucia began to wander through the house, pretending to be nervous, asking everyone if they had seen the so-called watch, until she reached the laundry room, looked at Camilla's backpack and said, as if it just occurred to her, "Better check the backpacks, right? In case someone put it there by mistake." And there, in front of everyone, she opened Camilla's backpack and pulled out the watch with a surprised face. No words were needed. The silence said it all. The astonishment on the faces, the fear in Camilla's own eyes, who went pale. "I don't know how it got there," she said weakly. But Lucia didn't give her any space. "Look, no one is accusing you. I just think something strange is going on here. That watch was inside your backpack, Camilla, and we have to be transparent, right?" Camilla looked at the watch as if it were a bomb in her hands, her heart racing, her throat tight. She tried to think how this could have happened, but found no explanation. And the strangest thing, no one said anything, neither defending her nor accusing her. They just watched, as if waiting for the next scene. Lucia crossed her arms and spoke with a well-controlled voice. "Better wait for Mr. Edgar to return. He will decide what to do." And that's how the plan really began, with a stolen watch, an open backpack, and a young woman not knowing where she stood. Everything carefully arranged, without witnesses, without any chance of defense. Lucia's game was just starting, and Camilla, unknowingly, had just fallen into a trap that could cost her everything she was still trying to hold on to. Edgar arrived home late in the afternoon, tired from the trip. He wore that formal clothes he hated, a loose tie, a serious face. He threw his keys on the counter and went straight to the office, as he always did. But before entering, he saw Lucia standing in the hallway, arms crossed, waiting for him. "I need to tell you something," she said, in that calm tone she used when she wanted to seem helpful, although inside she already knew a storm was coming. He let out a short sigh, turned to her, and gestured for her to speak. Lucia told him everything, about the watch, the backpack, the scare, the discovery. She didn't use the word theft, but left the atmosphere heavy, as if Camilla had been caught red-handed, and she, Lucia, was just protecting the house. Edgar listened silently, without interrupting, with hard, impenetrable eyes. When she finished, he asked dryly, "And where is the watch now?" "I put it in the living room drawer, just in case. I thought it best not to leave it in plain sight since, well, the situation was delicate." Edgar nodded, then turned and entered the office. He closed the door. Inside, his head was boiling, but on the outside he showed nothing. He didn't touch his phone, didn't call Camilla, didn't talk to anyone. He just sat in the armchair and stayed there, staring at the closed safe as if trying to solve an invisible puzzle. He knew that feeling. He had felt it years ago when he discovered his brother's betrayal, that mix of frustration, doubt, and distrust that tears you up inside. But this time was different. This time it made no sense. The girl who refused to touch a safe full of money was not the same one who would hide a wristwatch in her backpack. He went to the security panel, took out the laptop, and accessed the house cameras. He knew there were recordings of the hallway, the laundry room, the kitchen entrance. It wasn't state-of-the-art, but it was enough for what he needed. He opened the videos from the previous day and started watching everything calmly, pausing, rewinding, fast-forwarding. For almost an hour, he stayed there silently, eyes fixed on the screen. And then he saw it. It was early afternoon. Camilla was in the kitchen washing a tray, the backpack hanging in the laundry room, where it always was. Lucia appeared in the corner of the frame, entered the room, looked around, fiddled with something, and then left. The camera didn't capture the exact moment she manipulated the backpack, but it was clear she went there. And even more, there was no expression on her face, no doubt, no hurry, no surprise. It was as if she already knew exactly what she was doing. Edgar paused the video, stared at the frozen image of Lucia standing alone in the hallway. Then he slowly closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair, exhaling slowly. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but he still did nothing. The next morning, Camilla arrived as usual, punctual in a clean uniform, hair tied back, tired eyes. Only this time, she was quieter than usual, more closed off, almost shrinking. She greeted Lucia with a whisper. The woman barely replied with a dry, "Good morning," and went back to organizing the cutlery. Edgar, from the dining room, listened. He didn't appear, just stayed there, hearing everything with a cup of coffee in hand. The day passed slowly. Camilla worked in automatic mode. She did everything correctly but without energy. She barely spoke, didn't smile, didn't make eye contact with anyone, as if just waiting for the moment to receive the final reprimand, or to be fired. Edgar watched everything from afar. He saw her climb the stairs with the bucket, fold the cloths, clean the windows. It was like watching someone fighting not to collapse. Lucia pretended normalcy, but there was a victorious air in her steps, the tone of someone who believes they have already won. She spoke loudly to the other employees, repeated that discipline is everything and trust is built over time. She dropped hints, but with elegance. It was as if she had already written the end of the story and was now just acting out the last scene. At the end of the afternoon, Camilla was getting ready to leave. She grabbed her backpack, slung it over her shoulder, said goodbye with a shy gesture. But before she left through the door, Edgar appeared in the hallway. He called her in a low but firm voice. "Can you come with me for a moment?" She said nothing, just nodded and followed him, not knowing what to expect. Lucia saw everything from the kitchen, spoon in hand, chin held high. She believed the boss was finally going to make a decision, that he would make his message clear. But Edgar didn't take Camilla to the office. He took her to the backyard, a quiet place with stone benches and small trees. It was where he went when he needed to think. They sat there, and for a few seconds neither said anything, until he broke the silence. "Do you have something to tell me?" Camilla was surprised, but answered sincerely. "I didn't take anything. I don't know how that watch ended up in my backpack." Edgar nodded slowly. "I know." She opened her eyes, confused. He continued. "I saw the footage from the cameras. I saw what happened." Camilla exhaled sharply, as if she had been holding her breath all day. Her eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. "Thank you for believing in me," she said almost in a whisper. Edgar looked ahead, thoughtful. "It's not always easy to know who to trust. People very close to me have deceived me, but I'm learning that sometimes those who speak the least are the ones who show who they really are the most." They stayed there a while longer, unhurried, with few words, just silence saying what needed to be understood. And inside the house, Lucia had no idea what had just slipped through her fingers. The next day dawned with a heavy sky, as if the weather was trying to match the weight that still hung in the air. Fine rain tapped the kitchen windows and slowly trickled down. Camilla arrived early, as always, but this time there was a certain relief on her face, though tiredness still clung to her eyes. She entered quietly, went to the changing room, put on her uniform calmly, and began organizing the cleaning cloths. Lucia pretended nothing had happened, greeted without looking, and went on with her tasks. But inside the discomfort grew. She hadn't expected the boss to have seen the cameras, hadn't counted on that unexpected twist, and now tried to appear normal, though her gaze was restless. Mid-morning, Edgar appeared. He wore a dark shirt, no jacket, with stubble on his face. He crossed the house slowly, like someone who already knows where they want to go. He stopped near the stairs and saw Camilla from behind, cleaning the dining room windows. He called her with a calm voice. "Camilla." She turned gently, adjusted her bangs, and responded almost automatically. "Yes, sir. When you're done there, meet me in the garden." Camilla nodded without asking questions. She finished what she was doing, put away the cloth, and walked slowly to the backyard garden, the same as before. Edgar was there, sitting on the same bench, looking at the wet ground. She approached slowly and stood beside him. "You can sit down," he said, patting the stone bench next to him. She sat down, folding her hands in her lap. They stayed silent for a few seconds. The sound of the rain falling on the leaves was the only noise. "You look tired," he said, looking at the cloudy sky. Camilla gave a slight, uncomfortable smile, the kind you give when you don't know what to say. "Yes, a little. And your mother? How is she?" The question surprised Camilla. She hadn't expected it. She blinked slowly, as if checking if she had heard correctly. "She's fighting. Some days are better, others worse. But she doesn't give up." Edgar nodded, still looking at the horizon. "I went to the hospital the other day. I didn't speak to anyone. I just saw you there, sitting in the hallway." Camilla frowned, surprised. "You were there?" "Yes. I wanted to understand who you were, and what I saw I won't forget." She didn't know what to say. Silence returned, but this time it was different. It was silence full of unspoken things, thoughts pounding inside. "Why didn't you tell me what was happening?" Edgar asked, now looking at her directly. Camilla took a moment to answer. "Because it's nobody's problem. It's my life. I just wanted to work, to earn my money. I don't want anyone thinking I'm here out of pity or charity." He rested his elbows on his knees, moving his fingers thoughtfully. "Are you proud?" "I am, but it's not foolish pride. It's just how my mother raised me. We went through a lot, and she always told me we could lose everything except dignity." That phrase hung in the air. Edgar closed his eyes for a second, as if hit inside. The image of his mother came to his mind, saying almost the same thing many years ago, in a shack with a leaking roof. "When I was a kid," he began, looking at the floor, "my mother carried everything alone too. She had 3 kids, little money and no luxuries. One day she gave me the last bread in the house and went to work without eating. I remember it like it was today, and to this day that's what drives me, because I never accepted seeing someone who works their ass off treated like they're worthless." Camilla looked at him attentively. Edgar spoke slowly but sincerely. It wasn't a speech. It was a memory. It was pain. "I grew up believing everyone could deceive me. And the truth is most did, but you proved otherwise, and yet I allowed you to go through that situation." "It wasn't you," she said, finally speaking directly. "It was someone else. And life has taught me not everyone will like us, no matter how right we try to be." Edgar took a deep breath, looked up at the sky, and said almost as a relief, "I never apologized to you, but I should have." Camilla shook her head. "I'm not here for apologies. I just want to do my job, finish college, and see my mother get better." They fell silent again, but this time the silence was light, as if for a moment they had understood each other completely without many explanations. Edgar took out his phone, typed quickly, then put it away again. "I'm sorting out some things. I don't want to promise anything now, but if you need anything, whatever it is, let me know." Camilla looked him in the eyes firmly. "Thanks, but I still prefer to walk on my own feet. If I fall, I get up, but there are things I need to conquer alone." He smiled slightly, not mockingly, but with admiration. For the first time in a long while, he saw someone say that without vanity or posing. And there, in that wet garden, they stayed seated a few more minutes. 2 completely different worlds, united by a truth that neither money, time, nor resentment could erase. It was a somewhat muggy Tuesday, cloudy sky, no wind, one of those days where everything seems stopped, as if the world had lifted its foot off the accelerator. Camilla arrived at the usual time, but with a more closed-off face. She had slept little again. Her mother had felt sick during the early morning and only calmed down after taking the medicine Camilla had hurriedly given her. Still, there she was, clean uniform, hair tied back, and the same firm gaze as always. The house was strangely quiet. Lucia didn't even show up to hand out the day's tasks. One of the employees mentioned she had gone to the doctor. Camilla just nodded and continued with the bucket and cloths. That was good. A day without unnecessary mentions, at least for now. Shortly after 9, Edgar appeared. Unlike usual, he didn't have his phone in hand nor that rushed air. He wore a light blue shirt with rolled-up sleeves and seemed calm. He stopped at the entrance of the lounge and called Camilla softly. "Can you come here for a moment, please?" She left what she was doing and went to him. She thought it was something work-related, maybe a schedule change, maybe a new task. But he said nothing then. He just turned and walked ahead, gesturing for her to follow. They went up the stairs and walked down the hall to his office. When they entered, Edgar closed the door. The room was brighter than usual. The window was open, and sunlight was starting to peek through the clouds. Camilla stood there, unsure what to do with her hands. She never liked spending much time there. It was a charged space where everything was meticulously organized. It felt like one wrong step could make everything collapse. Edgar sat in the chair behind the desk and pointed to the chair across from him. "Please, sit down." Camilla obeyed, still confused, and waited. He took a deep breath, rested his elbows on the table, and looked at her calmly. "I need to ask you a favor." She raised her eyebrows, surprised. A favor from him? That sounded strange. "Of course. Whatever you need," she answered, trying to hide her nervousness. Edgar took a black leather folder, opened it, and took out some papers. He handed them to her. "These are company documents, things that need to be organized. There are data, old notes, reports, a total mess. And I realize that besides everything, you're detail-oriented and careful." Camilla took the papers and glanced quickly. They were spreadsheets, printed emails, handwritten notes. "You want me to organize this?" "I want that, but not only that. I want you to help me put all this documentation in order in the digital files too, to turn this into something functional." Camilla looked at him with some doubt. "But I'm in the cleaning department, and that's why this request is different. I know it's not part of your duties, but I also know you study, that you have a good head on your shoulders, and you've already shown me you're trustworthy. I just want to know if you accept. If you prefer to say no, that's fine. It won't change anything about your job here." She breathed deeply. Her mind started racing. It wasn't a simple task. It was an invitation to enter a part of the house no one else had access to. A kind of trust that came loaded with responsibility. It wasn't just about organizing papers. It was about the boss placing her somewhere else, in another kind of relationship. "And if I make a mistake, will you ask me about it?" "No problem. Nobody starts knowing everything. What matters is doing it carefully, and you have that in abundance." Camilla thought for a few seconds, then nodded. "All right, I accept." Edgar nodded, got up from his chair and went to a cabinet on the other side of the office. He took out 2 large boxes filled with more documents and old photos. "These too. If you can digitize everything, you'll save me months of headaches." She stood up, carefully took the boxes, and smiled slightly. "It'll be good for me too. I've always liked organizing messes, maybe because my life is full of it." He let out a low laugh, almost involuntarily. "I think that's why you're good at it. Because you know the value of every little thing amid chaos." Camilla left the office carrying the boxes, her heart beating faster, not because of the weight, but because of what it meant. It was the first time someone trusted her with something like this. Beyond cleaning, beyond the floor, beyond the rag and broom. That could be just paper to anyone else. But to her, it was almost a sign that things might be changing. On the way to the small room where she was going to work with the documents, she paused for a moment, set the box on a countertop, and looked out the window. The sky had completely cleared, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was moving forward. It wasn't just about enduring, it was about growing, and no one was going to take that away from her. Lucia returned to work 2 days later, pretending everything was fine, but it wasn't. Her expression was the usual one, serious, closed off, no smile. But inside she was furious. What happened with the watch hurt her pride. The plan seemed perfect, yet it failed. Edgar not only didn't fire Camilla, but even gave her a new role. That was too much to swallow. When she found out Camilla was organizing the employer's personal documents, she could hardly believe it. No one had that kind of access. Not even her. 10 years there, and Edgar had never asked her for something like that. For Lucia, it was like a stab in the back. It wasn't just jealousy anymore. It was pure rage. And she decided this time she would do it right. No mistakes. She was going to set a trap that left no doubt. She started observing again. She saw Camilla going up and down the stairs with boxes of papers, going from the office to the organizing room. The girl spent hours inside, typing, sorting documents, organizing files. She barely spoke to anyone. And the worst part, from Lucia's perspective, was seeing how Edgar was lighter. He walked down the hallway, glanced quickly at the little room, and sometimes even left a coffee or a small bottle of water by the door, like someone taking care of another. It was too much. That had to end. One Friday afternoon, Lucia entered Edgar's office with some excuse. She brought a tray with cookies and coffee like she did occasionally. He didn't suspect anything, let her in, set the tray on the table and stepped out to take a call. She was alone for a few minutes, enough time to notice the safe door was ajar, half open, as if he forgot to close it. That's when the idea came immediately. She knew she couldn't touch the money. That would leave traces. But right there, in plain sight, was a wristwatch with a dark strap, an old model Edgar only wore to special events. It was a less valuable piece, easy to hide, and more importantly, no one would believe an employee without money would resist taking such an item. The next morning, she waited for Camilla to come upstairs with the papers as usual. She knew Camilla would leave her backpack in a corner of the organizing room, as she always did. Lucia gave some excuse and stayed alone in the hallway. She entered the office, wearing fine gloves, took the watch, and in seconds went down to the organizing room and discreetly opened Camilla's backpack. The zipper was slightly open. She slipped the watch into one of the small pockets, zipped it up well, and went back to the hallway, her heart racing, not from guilt, but adrenaline. She was convinced this time it would work. The afternoon passed slowly. Camilla kept working, unaware of anything. At 5 o'clock sharp, as usual, she started packing up, slung the backpack over her shoulder, and headed to the exit door. That was when Lucia made her move. "Camilla, wait a moment." The young woman stopped near the door, slowly turned her face, somewhat confused. "Did something happen?" "Yes, something happened," Lucia replied in a firm but calm voice, as if just doing her duty. She approached Camilla with a serious look. "The watch of Mr. Edgar disappeared, the one he keeps in the safe. And today only one person has been going in and out of that office." Camilla frowned, confused. "Me? But I only went for the boxes with the documents. I didn't even touch the safe." Lucia crossed her arms. "If you have nothing to hide, you can open your backpack." Camilla's eyes widened, surprised by the request. She looked around. One of the security guards was already approaching, drawn by the conversation. "Of course I can open it," she answered, trying to stay calm, though her voice trembled a little. She lowered the backpack, unzipped it, and started showing what was inside. A case, a notebook, a pack of cookies, an old wallet, a charger. Normal things, until Lucia pointed to the small side pocket. "Open that one too." Camilla obeyed, put her hand inside, and when she pulled out what was inside, she froze. It was the watch, the same one she had once seen on her employer's wrist during one of those meetings full of important people. "This wasn't here before," she said, looking at the object in her hand, eyes wide and breathing heavy. Lucia slowly shook her head with a fake look of disappointment. "Camilla, why did you do this?" "I didn't do it, I swear. Someone put it there. Only you touched your backpack today. The organizing room was locked, and you had the key. Who else could have done it?" By now, the guard was beside them. The tension was palpable. Camilla looked around desperately, like someone searching for a hidden camera, a witness, anything that would prove this was a setup. "I didn't take it," she repeated, now louder, more anguished, but no one answered. The silence was louder than any word. Lucia crossed her arms and delivered the final blow. "It's best if Mr. Edgar decides what to do. I'm just doing my duty, Camilla." She stood there, holding the watch, breathing unevenly. Everything was spinning. It was like a nightmare you wake up from screaming, but no one hears. Only this wasn't a dream. It was real. And she was alone, trapped in a dirty game she didn't even know she was part of. And this time, the trap seemed to have worked. Camilla still had the watch in her hand when Edgar appeared in the hallway. He had just finished a call and didn't expect to find that scene. The guard by the door, Lucia with her arms crossed, and Camilla there, holding his watch like a ticking bomb. The silence broke only when Edgar slowly approached, his gaze tense. He said nothing, just extended his hand. Camilla, not knowing what to do, handed him the watch. It was in her backpack, Lucia said before he could ask any questions, her tone restrained, like someone just fulfilling their responsibility. Edgar looked at the watch, then at Camilla. She stood still, not blinking, mouth slightly open, trying to find words to explain what made no sense. "I don't know how it got there," she finally said, her voice weak but firm. "I didn't take it. I haven't even touched that watch before." Edgar didn't respond immediately. His expression was a mix of disappointment and confusion. Camilla saw it in his eyes. It was the same look of those who judge before hearing, who already made up their mind. "It was kept in the safe," Lucia insisted. "You yourself said only the two of us have the key, and I didn't touch anything. Now this girl, who comes here alone every day and has access to the office, shows up with your watch in her backpack." Camilla looked at her like someone facing a blade. She said nothing, just stared at her with anger and indignation. Her eyes were full of tears, but she stayed strong. Something was burning inside, but she wouldn't let it out. "I trusted you," Edgar said softly. "I let you into a place where no one else goes." Camilla felt the ground open beneath her feet. It was as if everything she had built in such a short time was being crushed, discarded, without a chance to defend herself. "I didn't do this," she insisted, stepping forward. "I would never take anything from here. I just came to work. Just—" "Enough," Edgar interrupted, raising his voice slightly. It was the first time he did. He didn't yell, but he was firm. And it hurt more than any shout. Camilla stepped back, not knowing what else to say. Her heart was racing, her legs weak. She wanted to run away from there, but she stood still, waiting for some reaction to save her, some chance to explain. But none came. Edgar turned his back, took a deep breath, and spoke without looking at her. "Can you go home? People, that's something you say afterwards." It wasn't exactly a firing, but the way he said it was worse, because it was like saying, "I don't even want to see you right now." And Camilla understood that. Did she really understand it? She took her backpack again, this time holding it with a grip so tight it almost broke the strap. She passed silently among the employees, through the cold hallways, her face burning, tears already stinging at the edges of her eyes. Only when she stepped out the main door did she break down crying, alone. Outside, with the world spinning and her chest empty, she walked quickly to the bus stop. The tears kept falling. She tasted the salt of crying in her mouth, the shame, the injustice, the lump in her throat. She thought about her mother, the hospital, everything she had already endured until then. And now this, she, who always did everything right, never took an extra cent, never responded with rudeness, and now treated like a thief. She sat on the bench at the stop, her shoulders slumped. A man beside her glanced quickly but said nothing. She didn't even notice. She just wanted to disappear. She just wanted to wake up from this nightmare. On the bus, she rested her head against the glass, people coming and going. The city noise felt distant. She kept reliving the scene over and over, Lucia's face, the silence of the others, Edgar's cold voice. And the worst part was having no way to prove her innocence. No camera, no witnesses, no explanation. When she got home, she went straight to her mother's room. Doña Lourdes slept with the scarf loosely tied around her head, her face pale but peaceful. Camilla knelt by the bed, rested her head on the mattress, and cried. She cried like a child, without shame, without holding back, just letting it all out. "Mom, I swear I didn't do anything wrong," but her mother didn't wake up. She was sleeping lightly, unaware of the world outside, and Camilla stayed there, lying on her lap like when she was little, seeking a little peace amid so much noise inside. That was one of the worst days of her life, not because she lost her job, but because they treated her like someone she never was, because she saw in the eyes of someone she trusted a judgment she didn't deserve. And when exhaustion finally overcame her crying, She silently promised she wouldn't let it go like that. Not out of pride, but because the truth sooner or later comes to light. The watch was on the office table. Edgar stared at it for a long time, not touching it, not saying anything. He was there alone, with the door closed, the house silent, and the sound of his own breathing echoing in his chest. The weight in his stomach was strange. Not anger, not frustration, but something deeper, an unease that wouldn't go away. He spent the whole night thinking, couldn't sleep well. The image of Camilla with watery eyes, her trembling voice, the shock on her face, everything flashed in his mind repeatedly like a bad song that wouldn't leave. And even though he tried to convince himself he did the right thing, something inside told him otherwise. Early the next morning, without even changing clothes, Edgar went straight to the security panel, opened his laptop, and reviewed the camera recordings from the last 2 days. He had done it before, but now he wanted to see everything calmly, with fresh eyes. There she was, Camilla, entering the office, taking papers, returning with boxes, always quick, always focused. At no point did she approach the safe, not once. The most she did was walk past it without deviating from her path. Edgar sighed and fast-forwarded the video. Now he wanted to see who else had entered there. It took a few minutes, but he found her. The day before the supposed disappearance of the watch, Lucia entered the office alone, with the excuse of the coffee tray. He had left the door open. Yes, he remembered. He was on the phone and had left the safe ajar. A small mistake, but a mistake, and she came in. She stayed about 2 minutes inside the room, the exact time between when he left to take the call and came back. The camera didn't show the safe head-on, but it showed her looking around, overly attentive, then leaving with that usual air, as if nothing had happened, disguising so well that even he, who had lived with her for years, hadn't noticed immediately. He went back to the next day's video. Lucia, again wandering the hallway by Camilla's room, a moment when she disappears from the frame for exactly 50 seconds, enough time for anything. Edgar froze the image and stared at her face, frozen on the screen, hard eyes, expressionless mouth, and that's when he really realized. Late, but he realized. He jumped up, walked around the room with heavy steps, hands on hips. His clenched chin spoke for itself, but he didn't say a word, only breathed deeply like someone holding back anger to avoid exploding. It wasn't just about the watch. It was about having judged, having doubted, having let Camilla leave that house as if she were guilty, having said, "I trusted you," when in reality, he didn't have the courage to trust fully. And now the damage was done. He called Mauro, the house security guard, over the intercom, asked him to find the latest footage from the laundry hallway camera. He wanted to see the exact moment Camilla left with her backpack. He wanted to be sure of everything. Mauro arrived quickly, handed over a pen drive with the files. Edgar plugged it into the laptop and watched again. There was Lucia handling the backpack with surgical care, then leaving slowly. It was subtle, but now he saw it. It was all there. He shut the laptop forcefully, closed the lid, stood still for a while, shame burning inside him, the shame of having been unfair, of not having trusted the one who deserved it most. In his mind, everything started to blur. The image of Camilla's sick mother, the girl going straight from work to the hospital, studying at night, waking up early. All that hit him now like an avalanche. Edgar never apologized to anyone, not easily. He was the type to swallow it, fake it, move on as if he'd made no mistakes. But this time it was different. He couldn't ignore it. He locked himself in the room for a while. He needed to think. He needed to act right for the first time in a long time. Not for the company, not for the money, not to keep up appearances. It was to make amends, to recognize, to not let someone leave with a label they didn't deserve. That same afternoon, he went to Lucia's door, knocked once. When she opened, he entered. Didn't give her a chance to prepare lies or theatrics. "We're going to talk now." Lucia tried to keep her stance, but her expression already showed she knew, felt the walls closing in. "I saw the footage," was all he said, and that was enough. She tried to speak, to deflect, evade. I just wanted to protect the house. I thought it was you, Lucia." He cut her off. "You planned it. You planted that and lied in my house." She fell silent. She knew it was useless. "Pack your things today." And he left the room without waiting for a response. He returned to the office, closed the door, leaned back in his chair, and took a deep breath again. But there was no relief. No, he still had one visit to make. And this time, it wasn't to watch or test. It was to truly apologize. Camilla's house door was low, made of old iron, slightly crooked. Edgar parked the car a bit away and stayed inside for several minutes, watching. He didn't know how to start. The steering wheel was cold in his hands, but sweat ran down his neck. Could be the heat or the nerves. He didn't know. He only knew he needed to do this. Not for her, but for himself too, to stop carrying that weight. He got out of the car and walked slowly to the door. He rang the bell once. He expected nothing. He rang again. She heard footsteps inside. Shortly after, the wooden door opened and Camilla appeared. She was wearing a loose t-shirt, her hair tied up messily, and a look of someone who hadn't slept well in days. When she saw who was there, she froze, said nothing, just stood there with one hand gripping the edge of the door. The silence was long, heavy, but it wasn't surprise, it was pain. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Edgar asked in a low tone. She didn't answer, but opened the door and turned, going inside. He understood the message. He went in too. The yard was small, with cracked concrete flooring, and two plastic chairs leaning against the wall. Camilla sat on one of them without looking directly at him. Edgar stayed standing in front of her. He felt his heart heavy, felt ashamed, something he hadn't truly felt in a long time. "I was wrong about you." Camilla finally raised her eyes. Her face was calm but hard. "I knew that would be the first thing you'd say." She spoke. He took a deep breath. "I could say I was deceived, that I trusted the wrong person, that I acted on impulse. And that would be true. But it doesn't change what happened with you." Camilla crossed her arms. Not defensively. It was more a gesture of firmness from someone who is listening, but won't let anything slide. "You didn't trust me," she said directly. Edgar nodded. "No, and I should have." Silence returned for a few seconds. He looked around, saw the poorly painted house wall, saw the window with a curtain too thin to block the sun, saw a sandal thrown near the door. All of that revealed more about her life than any report. "I saw the cameras, I saw what Lucia did. She doesn't work for me anymore." Camilla remained silent, neither smiling nor celebrating, just looked at him steadily. "You saw it after everything had already happened, after I left crying, after I slept hugging my mother, trying to understand what I had done wrong. But I did nothing, Mr. Edgar. Nothing." The way she said it, Mr. Edgar, was cold. There was some contempt, as if that name had lost its former weight. "I know," he replied almost in a whisper. "I know." Camilla nervously moved her hands, then stood and looked him in the eyes for the first time. There was anger, but also exhaustion, a lot of exhaustion. "You know what hurt the most? It wasn't that you didn't trust me. It was the way, the silence, the look, the 'you can go home,' as if I were guilty, as if I were trash." Edgar lowered his head and swallowed hard. "I was a coward. That's it, a coward." Camilla took a deep breath. She wasn't there to fight, but she wasn't going to pretend everything was fine either. "My mother, she saw that I got home early that day. She asked me what had happened. I couldn't even tell her, I just cried. And she, even sick, even weak, hugged me and said, 'You know who you are, and that's what matters.' And it's true. I know who I am, and I never needed anyone to prove it." Edgar was speechless, looked at the floor, then raised his head and asked, "Can I do something for you?" Camilla shook her head. "Yes. You can leave and think better before judging someone again." He stood there, unsure what to do, then turned and walked slowly to the door. He opened it, stepped out, and before closing it, looked back at her one last time. "If someday I can really fix this, tell me, even if it's many years from now." Camilla didn't respond, just stood there, face serious. He closed the door and got into the car without looking back. Inside the house, Camilla sat down again, rubbed her face, trying to breathe deeply. She knew that conversation didn't erase what had happened, but somehow it put an end, or maybe a new beginning. It was still impossible to tell. What she did know for sure was that not every apology fixes what's broken, but at least it shows the other person saw the damage, and sometimes that already changes something. 2 days passed since Edgar went to Camilla's house. He thought with time the situation would improve, that the apology he made that day, though brief, would open some door, but it didn't. She didn't answer, didn't send messages, didn't call, disappeared off the map, and that annoyed him more than he wanted to admit. That same week he saw the living room table covered in dust. The glasses on the tray were out of place. The silence in the house, which was once comfortable, now felt strange. Edgar wasn't one to miss people, but he did miss Camilla's presence. Not just for work, but for the energy, the firmness, the honesty that shone in her eyes, even when everything was falling apart. He kept turning over everything that had happened. He went back to the videos, the moments, the words. He tried to understand when he stopped listening to what really mattered, and deep down he already knew the answer. He shut down again, because it was easier to distrust than trust and be disappointed. And that's why he did to her what had been done to him years ago, judged without asking, condemned without listening. On Friday afternoon, Edgar put on a simple shirt, jeans, and went out without a driver. He drove to the public hospital where Camilla's mother was undergoing treatment. He parked in the side lot, took a paper bag from the passenger seat, and entered through the main doors. He didn't tell anyone, went straight to reception, and quietly asked, "Please, Mrs. Lords Oliveira, what room is she in?" The receptionist quickly checked the system and said, "Room 312, at the end of the hallway on the right." He thanked her and went. The hospital was simple, but clean. The hallways smelled of a mix of alcohol and reheated food. Nurses hurried by. Patients came and went in wheelchairs. It was another world, and Edgar felt small inside it. He knocked on room 312 with his knuckles, 2 sharp knocks. "You may come in," a weak voice said from inside. It was Camilla's mother. He entered slowly. Mrs. Lords was sitting on the bed, propped up on pillows. She wore a light blue headscarf and a thin blanket over her legs. When she saw Edgar, she opened her eyes wide. She clearly recognized him from TV, from the internet, but didn't make a fuss. She just smiled politely. "Mr. Edgar, it's me, yes. Sorry for showing up like this, unannounced." She adjusted the headscarf calmly and spoke. "Camilla isn't here right now. She went home to shower and get clothes. I know, I didn't come for her. I came for you." He took a chair from the corner and sat beside the bed. He took out from the bag a jar of soup he had made himself. Simple. Carrot, potato, chicken breast. Something from someone who had never cooked much, but tried. He also took out a small box with a new handkerchief, soft cotton, lilac-colored. He hadn't brought a fancy gift, just what he knew how to do. She looked at him calmly but curiously. "And why did you do that?" Edgar sighed and answered directly, "Because I was wrong about your daughter and didn't know how to apologize the right way, so I thought that starting with you, maybe it would be more human." Mrs. Lords was silent for a few seconds, then extended her thin hand and took his. "She suffered, you know. She came here that day broken, hugged me as if she were coming back from the end of the world and said nothing, just cried. Camilla never cries, she's too strong." He lowered his gaze. He felt his throat tighten. "I was a coward. I let her leave with her head down from a place where she deserved to walk with her chest held high." She squeezed his hand tighter but said, "She came here today. That counts. Most people who make mistakes just—" Edgar raised his eyes and looked her in the eyes. "I wish she would come back, but not as an employee. I want her to come back knowing she has value, that she has a place, that she's not beneath anyone." "Are you saying that now out of guilt?" "No, out of regret, which is different." The door opened slowly. Camilla entered carrying a bag, her hair still damp. She stopped when she saw Edgar, frowned, surprised. "What are you doing here?" Mrs. Lord smiled slightly and released Edgar's hand as they talked. "Just that." Edgar stood up. "I didn't come to pressure you, Camilla, nor to ask for anything. I just wanted to show that I care, and that truly I'm sorry for what you went through." Camilla stayed still for a moment, looking at him. She said nothing, but her eyes were no longer so hard. They seemed more tired. "I brought soup for your mother and a new handkerchief. It's little, but it came from the heart." She walked slowly to the bed, saw what he left, took the jar, looked at it for a few seconds, and then said, "Downstairs." "Thank you." Edgar took a deep breath and started to walk away. "I'm leaving now. I just wanted that, to ask for forgiveness, truly." And as he left, Camilla was still facing away, but before he reached the door, she said, without turning around, "The truth is, it hurt a lot. It wasn't just the distrust. It was the way you turned your back. But today was different." He stopped, turned around too, silent for a few seconds. "I'm trying to be a better person. A bit late, maybe, but I'm trying." And he left without looking back. It was past 8 p.m. when Camilla arrived home. She was exhausted. The hospital had been more complicated than usual. Her mother had a fever again, and she had to rush for prescriptions, medications, paperwork. When she opened the door to the house, she didn't even take off her sneakers, left the bag on the sofa, went straight to the kitchen, took a glass of water and drank. Slowly, staring into space, she felt everything around her heavy, her head aching, her shoulders stiff, and inside carried a hard-to-explain mix: tiredness, pain, sadness, anger, but also a pinch of doubt. That Edgar had shown up at the hospital with that face of someone trying to fix things shocked her. It wasn't common. That spun around her mind all day. She walked to her room, saw her mother sleeping, and kissed her forehead. Then she threw herself on the bed with her clothes on, too drained even to think much. She just wanted to disconnect. The next morning, Camilla woke up to the noise of the door, the neighbor calling, "Camilla, there's a man at the door looking for you." She jumped up, didn't even comb her hair, opened the window quickly. There was Mauro, Edgar's security guard, holding a brown envelope and looking respectful. No arrogance, no pressure. "Good morning, Camilla. Mr. Edgar asked me to give you this." "That's all. He said you can read it whenever you want, and you don't have to respond if you don't want to." She took the envelope without saying anything, nodded in thanks, and closed the window. She went back to the room, sat on the bed, took a deep breath, and opened it. Inside was a sheet of paper folded in half, handwritten, "Camilla, I know I may no longer deserve a place in your life, but even so, I want to try. You have shown more character than anyone who has passed through my house. And that's why I want to invite you back, but not as an employee. I want you to be my personal assistant. I want you to help me reorganize my company, my paperwork, my routine. I want you by my side, not to clean, but to build. And if you accept, I also want to help your mother, not out of pity, but because no one should carry as much alone as you do. If you want to talk, I'll be waiting. No pressure, Edgar." Camilla read the note 3 times. The first time with a racing heart. The second time with restrained anger. The third time calmly. Her hands felt sweaty. She didn't know if this was a new test, another game, or just someone trying to fix what they destroyed. The rest of the day passed like a blur. She did laundry, prepared lunch, went to the hospital, but during every break, the note returned to her mind. "Build," he wrote. He didn't apologize again, didn't complain, just offered an opportunity. And that, somehow, touched a place she didn't even know was still open inside her. 3 days later, she showed up at his house, knocked on the door, wearing a simple uniform, not the cleaning one this time. She carried a light backpack on her back and wore a serious look. The doorman didn't even have to ask. He called upstairs directly. "Mr. Edgar, Camilla has arrived." Edgar came down slowly. He wore jeans and a t-shirt. He wasn't wearing that usual cold blazer. He looked more like himself. When he opened the door, they looked at each other for a moment. The silence was broken by her. "I came to talk. I'm not promising anything. I just want to understand if this is real." "Is it real?" he answered immediately. "And it's yours if you want it." They went inside and sat on the terrace. He explained everything calmly, the position, the salary, the schedule. He said her mother could have special care if she accepted. He said a room in the house could be available for her to rest between shifts. He said he would make it a point to provide whatever she needed. Camilla listened silently, and at the end asked, "And why now?" Edgar answered, looking her in the eyes, "Because it took me a long time to understand that trust isn't bought, it's built, and you built mine, even after everything I did to push you away." She was silent for a few seconds, then calmly said, "I accept, but on my terms. I want to keep studying, take care of my mother, and I don't want anyone to pity me." "No pity," he said, "only respect." She extended her hand, he shook it, and in that handshake was more truth than in any contract. Signed. On her first day as assistant, Camilla arrived before everyone else. It was still dark when she passed through the mansion's gate, this time with a new badge hanging around her neck. She no longer wore the cleaning uniform. Now she wore simple formal clothes, a light shirt, black pants, and her hair tied up more neatly, but inside, nothing was so orderly. On the outside she was steady. Inside it felt like carrying a brick on her back. Her mind was spinning from the moment she said, "I accept," for Edgar. It was a quick decision, but not an easy one, because trusting, after being hurt like that, is almost like stepping onto ground that still feels soft. It's scary to sink. The first step inside the house was strange. The same entrance, the same smell, the same furniture. But now she was no longer the cleaning girl. She was the trusted person of the owner. And that affected everything. The atmosphere, herself, the others. The gardener greeted her with a different smile, the other employees too, but there was a hint of curiosity, a longer look like someone thinking, "What is she doing here now?" Camilla noticed but kept going. Edgar was waiting for her in the office. He was sitting, as usual, with his laptop open and a cup of coffee in hand. When she entered, he stood up, something he never did for anyone. "Good morning, Camilla." "Good morning." Her voice came out firm but controlled. She wanted to make it clear without saying it, that she was there on merit. "No, please." Edgar understood and respected the message. "There's still a lot to organize, but you'll go at your own pace. If you have questions, ask. And if you have opinions, express them." She nodded. The first days were tough. Backlogged reports, emails to answer, folders to file. Camilla immersed herself in work, not to impress, but to protect herself. The busier she was, the less she thought, remembered, or hoped. But even when focused, distrust sometimes appeared. For example, when Edgar praised something, she thanked him, but inside thought, "Is he sincere, or just trying to please me?" When he said he trusted her, she smiled but felt a foot back. It was automatic, not drama, just defense, and that started to weigh on her. One afternoon, while organizing papers in the library, Edgar came in unannounced, sat in the armchair, and remained silent. She kept typing, pretending not to notice, but she did. After a while, he said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. You still don't trust me, right?" She stopped typing and looked at him. "It's hard to trust after what happened." He nodded, as if expecting that. "I understand. And you have every right. I hold no grudges, but I'm on alert. Life taught me that." Edgar looked at her calmly. "What can I do to change that?" Camilla shrugged. "I don't know. I think time answers." They fell silent. Nothing more needed to be said. It was clear. She was trying, but still not fully there. She was testing, observing, feeling the atmosphere again, like someone treading carefully on dangerous ground. On the way home, Camilla thought about these things. On the crowded bus, tired body and heavy backpack, she looked out the window and remembered her mother saying, "We can forgive without forgetting, but forgetting without healing doesn't work." Maybe that was it. She had forgiven, but the wound was still open. At home, Mrs. Lords was better. The treatment seemed to be working. The smile on her face when she saw Camilla enter was worth everything. They had dinner together, laughed at silly things, and Camilla told a little about the new job. Not everything, just the basics. "And is the boss treating you well?" Camilla thought before answering. "Yes, sometimes too well." "And do you trust him?" She took a while. "I'm learning to trust. Little by little, Mrs. Lords." She smiled tenderly. Then that's a start. That night, Camilla went to bed thinking about that. At first, because despite everything she had lived through, all the blows she received, she could still take steps. Even distrusting, even tired, she still believed she could have a different place in the world, a real space. She just needed to see over time if that place was really there. The hospital had that same usual atmosphere, overly bright light, strong disinfectant smell, low voices mixed with quick footsteps of hurried people. Camilla walked the halls like someone who was already part of the place. She passed by almost every afternoon after work to visit her mother. She knew some nurses' names, greeted the porters, recognized patients by their faces. That Thursday, everything was normal. She finished her shift a little earlier, stopped by the bakery, and bought a banana smoothie her mother liked, along with some sweet cookies that were on sale. She arrived at the hospital tired but with the strength that only true love gives. She went up to her usual floor, 4, room 312. She pushed the door carefully, like every day. But this time, before entering, she saw something that made her stop. Edgar was sitting beside the bed. It was not an image she expected to see. He was there wearing dark jeans, a light shirt with the sleeves rolled up, holding an open book in his hands. He was reading something quietly. Camilla stayed in the doorway for a few seconds, unable to move. He didn't see her arrive. Her mother, half reclined with her eyes closed, seemed just to be listening. Her face was calm, her expression serene, as if that unexpected presence had soothed something. Camilla entered quietly, making no noise. Only after a few steps did Edgar look up and see her. He closed the book slowly and stood up. "Hello, I came to see how you were." Camilla stood there, bakery bag still in hand, squinting to try to understand what was going on there. "How did you know she was here now?" "I called the hospital, asked if I could visit her and if she would be awake at this hour. I didn't want to tell you before. I thought you might say no." Camilla didn't answer immediately. She looked at her mother, who now slowly opened her eyes with a smile on her face. "Daughter, look who came to see me," Doña Lourdes said in a low but happy voice. Camilla approached the bed, set the bag on the table nearby, and took her mother's hand. "I'm still trying to understand." Edgar took a step back, as if not wanting to interrupt the moment. "She told me she feels proud of you every day, that even though she's sick, what matters most is seeing you strong, standing." Camilla looked at him with a mix of surprise and caution. "She says that to everyone, but only I know what it's like to carry that every day." Edgar nodded. "I know, and that's why I came, not out of obligation, but because I needed to truly understand who that woman who raised you was." Doña Lourdes laughed softly. "I'm nothing special, young man. I just did what any mother would do." "Not every mother," he said. "You raised a rare person." Camilla sat in the chair next to the bed. She looked at Edgar differently now, still wary, but with less resistance. It was as if an internal barrier was beginning to crack. "Did you come just for this? Just for this? No cameras, no one from your team, no photos, none of that good businessman stuff. Just me, no badge, no shield, no plan." She crossed her arms thoughtfully. "And what did my mother tell you? That you're not ordinary, that you endure more than you should, and yet you never lost your heart along the way." Camilla was silent for a moment, then looked him straight in the eye and said, "I've heard a lot from many people, but today was different." Doña Lourdes watched them both with a slightly foolish smile, as if she saw something forming between them that neither of them quite understood yet. "Are you going to stay a little longer?" she asked Edgar. "Only if you want me to." Camilla looked at her mother, then back at him. "Stay." He sat back down, took the book from the table and asked, "May I continue where I left off?" Doña Lourdes nodded, her eyes shining. Camilla remained silent, watching as he read quietly, at a calm pace. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, heart tight. But this time it wasn't pain. It was something different. A good kind of discomfort, if such a thing exists. A new feeling slowly being born amid it all. It was strange to see Edgar so human, and for the first time she let the silence be comfortable. It was late afternoon when Edgar appeared at the door of Camilla's house. Night was falling, the sky painted with purples and oranges, and the calm that comes with rest time. She was in the living room, reading an email from the university, the same routine as always. His invitation to talk came as a surprise. He had been there before, but always under different circumstances. This visit felt different. Camilla stood up, proudly adjusted the backpack she carried, and went to the door. He entered, said good evening, and stood for a second looking around as if noticing details he hadn't before. The picture of her mother on the wall, the plants near the window, the simple but cozy sofa. "You asked me to come talk," she said, already suspicious. "I came to keep my promise," he answered softly. They sat in the living room. He positioned himself opposite her. Her hands were crossed on her knee, just waiting. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. It was wrinkled, as if he'd carried it for days. He placed it on the coffee table. "I read your university paper yesterday. Congratulations. You chose a difficult but important topic." She frowned, surprised. "I knew about that and thought you deserved to see this." He opened the envelope and revealed a large document, a DNA test completed and signed by a reputable laboratory. "I am your biological father." The words seemed to echo. Her forehead tensed, her breath froze, her heart expanded in her chest. I choked. "I am your father," he said calmly. "Whether you knew it or not, you were always my daughter. I only discovered it recently, but I wanted to meet you before telling you. I wanted it to be you, the character one has or doesn't have, who showed me who you are. And you did." Camilla felt her legs weaken. Time stopped. Her heart seemed ready to jump out of her mouth, and her mind raced, but still she listened to every word, breathed every syllable. "How is that?" she tried to ask. "How did you find out?" He pulled out a second envelope with old photos, one of him younger, holding hands with a different woman and her, a baby, in her arms. "It was your mother. Before she died, she searched for me. She kept your birth certificate, told me about you, and left this document with me. I didn't want to believe it immediately. Only now did I have certainty and came to find you, but I wanted to know you first." Her eyes widened, tears appearing, not just from the revelation, but from the unexpected way it was delivered, without fanfare, without demands, just truth. "So you brought this for me," she said, pointing to the test. "So you have a choice. I know it's a lot to process, but it's real, and it's here." He extended the document. She looked, took a deep breath, and reached out to touch the paper. The lines, signatures, the lab's logo, all said the same: Revelation. He held her gaze, steady but kind. "You're not obligated to feel anything or treat me differently. I just wanted you to know and understand why I wanted so much to really know you." She was silent for what felt like forever, hands trembling, memories of herself since childhood. Work, hospital, courage, mother, and now a wealthy, reserved man finally revealing himself as a father. The puzzle pieces fell into place. Everything fit strangely but made sense. The simple tribute at the hospital, the insistence on keeping her place, even if she didn't want it, the unexpected care. She breathed deeply, raised her eyes, and met his. "I don't know what to say. I only know that you let me choose, without pressure or words. You're my daughter. Start calling me Dad. You gave me that." He smiled, relieved. "For me, that already says a lot." She closed her eyes for a second, took a deep breath, and pulled the paper from the envelope. "Can I keep it?" He nodded. She stood for a few seconds, holding the document in her hands. Then she turned and went to the bookshelf. She took a simple photo frame, removed a picture of her mother, and placed the document behind it, as if it were part of her story. She turned back to him. "I'm going to sleep now, but thank you." Without saying more, she took the envelope and put it in her backpack. She left the room and closed the door behind her. Outside, he sighed deeply, sat back down in the living room, and looked out the window. Out there, the city lights began to shine, showing that even in darkness, something new was igniting. He didn't know what his tomorrow would be, but he knew the present was real, and that her final choice was more precious than any fortune or position. And for the first time, he felt that maybe it was worth trusting again. Did you enjoy the video? Then subscribe to the channel to keep following stories that move and inspire. Leave a like to show you're with us on this journey, and don't forget to comment below what touched your heart the most in this story. We love reading every word from you and building this real connection.